What's up, YouTube? This your man Rio 855. Yes, and this is another session of geniuses. Um, I talk about a lot of geniuses like Prince, Teddy Riley, people like that. Uh, this is from the producer's point again, and this one is about my man Norman Whitfield. To me, he was the man, the consciousness of Motown. Yeah, Norman Whitfield. As y'all know, you know Norman Whitfield in the movie Temptations. Some younger cats. Yeah, played by the actor Mel. I forget his last name, but his name was Mel. But yeah, that was Norman Whitfield. A lot of people know him as arrogant and cocky, but he was a genius. Uh, the guy was a great writer and a great producer, and he wrote a lot of innovative hits, and especially in the social conscious area, he was so good. As y'all know, some of the hits like "Ain't Too Proud to Beg" by the Temptations, "Heard It Through the Grapevine" with Marvin Gaye and Gladys Knight, "Cloud Nine," Temptations, "I Can't Get Next to You." He wrote "War," "Ball of Confusion," "Just My Imaginations," and "Smiling Faces." Papa was a Rolling Stone. And later on, he had his own thing, and he was responsible for Car Wash. So I'm just gonna get into a little bit of analogy of history of Norman Whitfield and when he was born. He was born Norman Jesse Whitfield, May 12th, 1940. He died September 16, 2008. He was an American songwriter and producer who worked with Barry Gordy's Motown labels during the 60s. He's been credited as one of the creators of the Motown sound and the late 1960s subgenre of psychedelic soul. Yeah, excuse me, most deaf. During his 25-year career, as I stated, Whitfield co-wrote and produced many enduring hits for Motown artists, like I said, including Temptations, "Ain't Too Proud to Beg," I Know I'm Losing You," "Heard It Through the Grapevine," Gladys Knight and Marvin Gaye, as Marvin Gaye being one of the biggest hits on there. "Cloud Nine," "I Can't Get Next to You," Temptations, "War." Edwin, that guy, "Ball of Confusion," Temptations, "Just My Imaginations," Temptations, "Smiling Faces," sometimes, "Undisputed Truth," and "Papa Was a Rolling Stone," Temptations. And Whitfield worked extensively with the Temptations as producer-songwriter. He produced 8 of their albums between 69 and 1973. He then started his own label, Whitfield Records, in 1975, which yielded the Rolls-Royce hit "Car Wash." Oh yes, alongside his Motown lyrical collaborator Barry Strong. He was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2004. He wrote and co-wrote 61 hits on the UK charts and 92 on the US charts. Wow. Yes, Whitfield. That man was bad, man. He was bad. Okay. Whitfield was born a native of Harlem, New York, and spent much of his teen years in local pool halls in the late teens, and then his family moved to Detroit, Michigan, so that his father could join his sisters in work and her husband chain of drugstores, Bartwell Drugs. He attended Northwest High School. Yeah. At 19, Whitfield began frequently Motown, Hitsville, USA offices for a chance to work for the growing label. Founder Barry Gordy Jr. recognized Whitfield's persistence and hired him for the quality control department, which determined which songs would or would not be released. Whitfield joined Motown's in-house songwriting staff, co-writing the Marvin Gaye's hit Pride and Joy, the marvelous Too Many Fish in the Sea, and the Velvet's Needle in a Haystack. He took over Smokey Robinson's role as the main producers in The Temptation in 1966, after his Ain't Too Proud to Beg performed better than Robinson's Get Ready on the pop charts. Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, that's Whitfield for you. I think Whitfield main thing was when he wrote the hits. I heard it through the grapevine, and this was it. He found a songwriter collaborator and lyricist Barrett Strong. That's the relationship that worked, and that's the relationship that went on and made him a legend. And performed on Motown's first hit record, Money, That's What I Want. That was Barrett Strong's first Motown record, and Money, That's What I Want was the first hit, and wrote material for The Temptation and other Motown artists such as Marvin Gaye and Gladys Knight and Pips, both of whom Whitfield produced in versions of Whitfield's strong compositions. I Heard It Through the Grapevine. The Gladys Knight and Pips version was the best-selling Motown single so far, but it was surpassed a year later by Gaye's version. I think Gaye's went platinum, sold a couple of million, probably more, and it stayed on the charts longer. And both of them sound different, but you get a much deeper, soulful Marvin Gaye. I'm talking about deep soul. Gladys Knight's was more up tempo. You can kind of dance to it. So they both great songs. After Temptations, lead singer Dave Ruffin was replaced by Dennis Edwards in '68. Whitfield moved the group into a harder, darker sound that featured a blend of psychedelic rock and funk, heavily inspired by the work of Sly and the Family Stone and the Funkadelic. Yeah, this is when they went to Psychedelic Soul, kind of. He laid heavy in the lyrics of Barrett Strong and everything. It was much more intense, and the sound was much more intense. So funk and conscious lyrics went together, and it blended that sound, especially for the times it was coming in '68 through the '69 era and early '70s. So that's where he gelled. That's when Whitfield really became good and important. And he was the man, he was the man at Motown then, because he was writing these type of hits. Yeah. And one of the first Temptation singles to feature his new Psychedelic Soul was Cloud 9. Yeah, Cloud 9 was the one in '68 which earned Motown's first Grammy Award, Best Rhythm and Blues Performance by Duo or Group, Vocal Instrumental. A second Grammy Award for Best R&B Vocal Performance by Duo or Group for Whitfield, and The Temptation came in '73 with Papa Was a Rolling Stone. And the single instrumental B-side earned Whitfield arranger Paul Razak a Grammy Award for Best R&B Instrumental Performance, and Whitfield and Strong shared the Songwriters Award for Best Rhythm and Blues Song. Yeah, that really propelled him. Papa Was a Rolling Stone, not one of my favorite songs, but it was a hit for the time, and Whitfield nailed it, And I think at that time it was one of their biggest, Temptations at the time in the '70s, and one of their biggest last 70 hits. And like I said, Whitfield had a hold on Temptations, and I don't think another producer could do no more after that. And so that was basically the Temptation swan song, and I think that era was over. And Whitfield's, to me, was just beginning, because he had more to come. Yeah, Psychedelic Soul and the Breakdown with Motown. Psychedelic Soul records Whitfield produced for the Temptations and other artists such as Edwin Starr. Yeah, that's who did War. And the Undisputed Truth experimented with and updated the Motown sound for the late '60s. Longer songs, distorted guitars, multi-tracking drums, and innovative vocal arrangements became trademarks of Whitfield Productions and later of his records produced by Motown staffers he coached, including Frank Wilson. But friction and antagonism grew between Whitfield and the Temptations. The group hated how Whitfield put more emphasis on the instrumentation instead of their vocals, and that he was writing fewer romantic ballads for them. Everybody know the Papa Was a Rolling Stone. They wanted a ballad. But this is the time and this was the era. You had to have longer songs and you had to have a bridge. You had to get into instrumentations. You had to kick the that's what was going on. People wanted to dance. People wanted to get into it. People were smoking, having a good time and up, 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 getting into consciousness. So this is what people wanted. Whitfield will often record notably different versions of songs with different artists in search of a hit, and did so successfully in the cases of Edward Starwood War, originally recorded by Temptations, and The Undisputed Truth with Smiling Faces sometime. 1971, also originally by the Temptations. Wow. Papa Was a Rolling Stone. 72 was done first by The Undisputed Truth, before Whitfield re-recorded the song with the Temptations for a longer, more definitive, and massively successful version. One of the Whitfield's last major hits at Motown was Yvonne's Fair It Should Have Been Me, 1975 song he had written in 63 and re-recorded originally with Kim Weston. Wow. Whitfield, I tell you, Whitfield had it going on, man. And Whitfield Records in later years. In 75, Whitfield held Motown, Whitfield left Motown following his moves from Detroit to form his own label, Whitfield Records. His first act was The Undisputed Truth, whom he had convinced to leave Motown, followed by Rolls Royce, Willie Hutch, Nitro, Mama T, and Junior Walker. The Undisputed Truth scored their second biggest hit in 76 with the disco song You Plus Me Equals Love, their first single on Whitfield Records. Norman Whitfield had an international smash hit in 1976 with Rolls Royce Car Wash, issued on MCA Records. Rolls Royce, whose members were originally Edward Starr, backing band, while at Motown, went on to record 3 more popular albums and had 2 huge UK hits with Wishing on a Star and Love Don't Live Here Anymore, but could never top the success of Car Wash. Yeah, I had that album, Car Wash, and that just was a huge soundtrack. And I think it was like 3 million off the gate or something. It was huge. That was one of the first records when my mom replayed and I would play, and I was a little kid at the time, and that 4 or 5 years old. And I love that soundtrack. Zigzag, my favorite song. Car Wash was served as the theme song in the 1976 motion picture Car Wash. The Car Wash soundtrack won Whitfield a Grammy Award for Best Album or Best Original Score written for a motion picture or television special. He also composed the theme song for the 1977 motion picture Which Way Is Up, performed by Star God. Yeah, I knew that one. In the early 1980s, Whitfield began working as a producer for Motown again. Him and the Temptations' 1983 hit single Sail Away and the soundtrack to The Last Dragon. Told you the man is a genius. On January 18, 2005, Whitfield pleaded guilty for failing to report royalty income he earned from 1995 to 1999 to the Internal Revenue. Yeah, facing charges of tax evasion on more than $2 million worth of income. He was sentenced to 6 months of house confinement and $25,000 fine. He was not in prison because of health problems such as diabetes. During his last months alive, Whitfield was bedridden at Los Angeles Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where he underwent treatment for diabetes and other ailments. Whitfield fell into a coma, briefly improved, but eventually succumbed to the diabetic complications. Whitfield died on September 16, 2008. He is interred in the Forest Lane Memorial Park, Hollywood Hills. Wow. This man was a genius. Plus, you know, the tracks. He was really the heart and soul of Motown. And in Motown, you had Hollandos and Holla in the early years with the Supremes. And, you know, they was the toaster of Motown. Smokey Robinson, who had a hold on Temptations, and Mary Wells. But once Whitfield got into the Temptations in the mid 60s, he really basically controlled Motown. And you had, you know, people like Stevie Wonder that was the man in the 60s, in the late 60s and the 70s, especially in the 70s. Stevie Wonder was the man. And it became more of, you know, writer-producer and what was going on with the funk during those times. So Whitfield already was doing this early in the 60s, and he created a certain sound. Basically, he created a genre. Just like I said with Teddy Riley, you create a genre, you know, you amazing. You know, Psychedelic Soul or New Jack Swing, or Prince, you know, with what he created, the Minneapolis sound, or, you know, electro funk, things that you say, wow, you know, you that good of a producer, you that good of a writer, you know, that's genius. And Whitfield was a genius because he did it with Undisputed Truth, the experimental group, and then he did it later with Car Wash, with Rolls Royce, with Car Wash, and a few of their albums. You know, it didn't work. It could have been where I think he wanted the lead singer to be a superstar, but it could have worked out better. But they still was a great group. You know, it's nothing like instruments and people playing and people writing. You will never get that back. You know, these days it's a few out there who's doing it, who's still writing and producing. But with the technology we got, a lot of people going, but they're not making those albums they made back then. You know, it was genius what they was doing back then. You know, they putting together stuff, and then the stuff they promoting is crap. You know, because it's good music out there, they just not promoting it. They promoting crap. But Whitfield, you know, he's a genius producer, and he's one of my top producers of all time. It's so many, you know, I can name. I had to make a video about that. You know, producers like Curtis Mayfield, Prince, you know, they are the top. You know, I think Whitfield was a better producer than Quincy Jones. Yes, I do. And he's on my list. You know, like I said, he's up there with a few, you know, and a few people I could name, like I say, Curtis Mayfield, people like Arif Martin. And a lot of people don't know Arif Martin, but Arif Martin was a hell of a producer. You know, people like that, you know, can do sound. Even Phil Spector, much as you hate the man, he was a great producer. Yeah, so I'm gonna sign off, and that was the genius of Norman Whitfield, a great writer, producer, responsible for so many hits on Motown, and then later on was the creator and the founder of Whitfield Records, and, you know, of the group Undisputed Truth with Smiling Faces, later with Rolls Royce and Car Wash, and so on. The master of, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, both versions by Gladys Knight and Marvin Gaye. And a lot of the Temptation hits like Ain't Too Proud to Beg and Psychedelic Shack and or Cloud Nine and many other hits. So my man Norman Whitfield, one of the greatest of all time, a genius. This is Rio 855 with Rio 855 channel. Subscribe, like, share, and comment. And with Retro Vibes. Subscribe, like, share, and comment. I'm saying peace, God bless, and thank you.